Welcome back to Sonic Creations, everyone. So we are here to talk about Sonic Eclipse leaks a little bit more in depth, but before I get into it, I just want to preface it with I read a lot of comments that gave me a lot of ideas, and I kind of came to the conclusion that, well, there's a little bit more to explore here before we move on to other things. I don't want to just start going too far with this idea because there is a potential that these leaks are fake, or at the very least inaccurate, or are no longer accurate to the current state of the project of the next Sonic game that Sonic team is working on. So let's take all of this as just speculation and that we're just having fun discussing if this is true, what could it mean? So one of the first things I want to get into is that in the Eclipse leaks, it mentions the Eclipse dimension. Now, this would basically be a place that they find a way to get to, or that there's some ancient teleportation device that takes them there, whatever. There is another dimension that they can travel to, and they need to travel to for story purposes. Now, we only know of one other dimension as far as I'm concerned, at least officially in the games, and that is the Sol dimension, and that's where Blaze is from, along with, I believe, Marine is from there as well. Now, the interesting thing about the Sol dimension is that there is a strange connection here when you think about Iblis from Sonic 06. And yes, we're bringing in some Sonic 06 elements here because I feel that it might be relevant, not only because of the 20th anniversary, because some people don't think so, but also because in games like Shadow Generations, for example, let's not forget, and it wasn't forgotten all the way back in 2011 with Sonic Generations. So let's look at this objectively. Sonic 06 is not just this thing that's erased from the timeline. Seems like Shadow remembered who Mephiles was, so let's just speculate here. Iblis is soul energy. At least this is my thought, right? He is maybe from, or originated from, Blaze's Sol dimension. Now, even if that's not explicitly stated in the original Sonic 06 story anywhere, let's imply that that's why Blaze was after Iblis. That's why she went to Silver's time to help him fight Iblis, which was really her villain, which is why she sacrificed herself at the end to seal Iblis within her. And there's also implications that she could still have Iblis sealed within her, but that's a whole other topic. We won't get too much into that. But just the idea that the only reason that Blaze was able to seal Iblis within her is because she was compatible with that energy, meaning that Iblis is soul energy. The reason that Silver could not contain Iblis is because he runs off of chaos energy. So there's a difference between their dimensions. Now, the Eclipse dimension, what could that mean? And no, I don't think it's Eclipse the Darkling, as funny as that theory is. It's like, there's no way they would bring back Archie characters and just start doing that now, right? They probably would have done that for Shadow Generations, like I was speculating originally when that was coming out. So what I actually think the Eclipse dimension might be, and this was from a comment that I read, the Eclipse dimension might be the dimension that Mephiles is from, and he operates on his own energy that isn't chaos energy or soul energy. It could be Eclipse energy or something, you know, some other name. Now, what's interesting about this is that that would mean that we could see a return of Mephiles, or Mephiles' kind. Maybe he's not like the king of the Eclipse dimension, right? Maybe he's just one of many of his kind. And there's a lot more of these beings that can take the shadows of other people and take their likeness and manipulate and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And what could this Eclipse dimension look like? Well, from the end of the world segment, from Sonic 06, we saw that everything kind of had this purpley haze to it, and it kind of looked like there was a solar eclipse. And I'm thinking, wouldn't that be interesting if that's what the Eclipse dimension looks like? It's got this like purplish sky, and there's this crystallized terrain, kind of like Crystal Mephiles, you know, in his like final form. So I don't know, I just think that there could be something there, because there's been teases of Silver and Mephiles returning, along with Infinite, which is strange, because it's like, I was really not expecting they would touch Infinite again, but he deserves to have a second run as a major villain, not just a sidekick to Eggman, but a full-on villain. I think that that would be really, really cool to see for Infinite as well. But that is another topic for another video, because that's a whole other theory of where he went and how he could come back and all that stuff. But if we're just talking about the Eclipse dimension and how this could tie in, I think that even if this isn't going to happen, right? Let's say these leaks are not anywhere near what the game is actually going to be. I still think this is a really cool idea. I still think that this kind of has enough legitimacy to it when you start piecing the puzzle together and connecting 06 to this next Eclipse game, that this could be a spiritual sequel to Sonic 06. Something that answers, where did Iblis come from? Where did Mephiles come from? Why was Blaze so adamant to sacrifice herself to save Silver's future, right? Because she felt responsible. That kind of writing, I know it's maybe not what they intended at the time. She was just being a hero. Sure, but I think what would be more interesting is that if she felt guilty, that's why she traveled to Silver's time. That's why she was there. Now, how did she do that? That's a whole other story, right? And I kind of like that 06 left some of that open. Like, how did Blaze get here? Why is she here? Is she from the future? What happened? Did they rewrite stuff? It's like, maybe they didn't, you know? There's something really, really interesting that clicks into place when you start lining these things up. Now, could we see the Sol Dimension in an official Sonic game? I think so. I really think it's possible, you know? And I think that Blaze returning as a major character, even if she isn't playable yet, I think that's still a step in the right direction, because her character is so underutilized and is so interesting because we just don't know anything about her, right? We know she's from the Sol Dimension. We know that she's friends with Marine the Raccoon. We know that her and Sonic have teamed up in the past to defeat various villains, but we haven't really seen who she really is. 06 was the closest thing to that, and the only sense that I got from her was that there was a deeper reasoning going on in her mind that she was keeping to herself. She was holding some burden. She's already a much more quiet character than characters like Rouge or Amy. She's kind of her own category of all the female Sonic characters. So I think that that's why she stands out. That's why she's a fan favorite. And also she is the only one who can actually keep up with Sonic and is sort of Sonic's equivalent in terms of like dimensions. They're sort of the same character in other dimensions. So it's really interesting to think about, as well as like, how does being a princess affect her? Like, she's a princess in the Sol Dimension, but we rarely ever see her there. And so it's like, what is that like if she's the princess, but she's never where she needs to be, right? She's never taking care of her people or whatever, right? Is she even able to get back to the Sol Dimension? Is there some way that she can travel? There's something so mysterious with her character, and I think they could play into that, of like, maybe she does have secrets, maybe she does hold guilt. There's a lot to that, right? Now, you could also argue, well, maybe she also developed feelings for Silver, and you know, that's a whole other kind of irrelevant conversation, but that doesn't change the story whether she did or she didn't. It still makes complete sense that the only reason that she would sacrifice herself, to me, other than her just being very heroic like Sonic, I just don't think Sonic would do something like that. And not that they're that equivalent, they're not the exact same character, but I just think that like, no, there's got to be some deeper reasoning to that. And so I want some of these questions answered. And yes, now to get to like the point of, could Iblis still be sealed within Blaze? If Blaze cries like Elise cried and released Iblis, will it also release from her? It would be the only way to bring Iblis back. Now, it may not even be Iblis completely. It could be Iblis, just his essence is still attached to her in some way. And so she's extra powerful now because she has Iblis's power, you know? There could be that element to it as well. Maybe she has a new transformation. Who knows? But there is a lot to do with Blaze and Silver, even though 06 kind of ended off in a way that I'd say 06, even though it likes to think it doesn't exist, right? And wants people to just kind of not worry about it. There's so many cool ways you can tie that story back into a future Sonic story and not have it really affect anything or change anything major. If it's done right, and if the writers really are cooking, I think we could see something like this happen. Plus, you also have to think about that, and this is irrelevant, I know, but it's not entirely irrelevant. But if the movies choose to adapt the Sonic 06 storyline, which they're capable of doing, as we've seen of the list of games that they're basically allowed to adapt, Sonic Unleashed not being one of them, unfortunately. But this would be, honestly, a great one to do, because we get to see Sonic 06 in live action, and that would be legendary. I mean, that would fill the theaters for sure, because it's a pretty notorious game, but it's also having such a positive comeback as of recent. So it would be really interesting to see how that would change the feeling towards Sonic 06's story and its elements, and how that would change the zeitgeist of the Sonic fan base. It already sort of has changed, not just because of fan projects like Project 06, but also because people have always seen the potential in Sonic Echo 6. That's why it's such a bummer that it didn't turn out finished and it was unpolished. That's why it sucks, you know? So anyway, I don't want to go off too far on a tangent, but I just wanted to make a video about the implications of maybe there are multiple dimensions at play in this next Sonic game, and maybe we'll also be able to see the Sol Dimension as well. Maybe Blaze and Silver have a much larger role in this than we think. Maybe it is more like Sonic CD and it's more like time travel, and they're traveling to a future where Mephiles takes over. Who knows? Like, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and I just realized after making my video that, oh my god, this is actually really fun to speculate on, and I should take advantage of this time to speculate, and I wouldn't necessarily criticize anyone who does, because this is the time for it. The game could be announced any month now, you know, and I'm sure we're gonna get some sort of answers from that first teaser trailer, and they're gonna have to reveal the title, and so we'll know if it's Sonic Eclipse. Even if they change the name to something else, it could still be accurate to the Eclipse leaks. I mean, that's worth noting as well. But yeah, I'm really excited for this next Sonic game, and it's like, well, while we can speculate, why the hell not? It's so much fun. And me being a more like narrative and story character based channel, I just start connecting dots and writing my own story for what I'd want for the next official Sonic game anyway, even though I know it probably won't happen. It's just the way my brain works. I'm just like, oh, what if they did this, this, and that? And not really trying to set anyone up or myself for disappointment, just trying to have some fun and get excited. It is, to me, still so crazy to think that they would bet it all on Silver, you know? I don't know about that, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I do want to just give a quick update on Sonic Cybernetics Episode 7. So I decided not to release the clip for that first scene of Episode 7 just because it's taking me longer than I realized, and it was putting a lot of pressure on me to polish that fully instead of like working on all the other scenes that also need a lot of attention, you know? And I kind of work best out of order, and so having to like force myself to focus on one scene, it was just kind of like, you know, what am I even doing this for? Because the clips, they don't always perform well anyway on my channel, and it's not all about performance, but it's just that I think it would be better if you guys just experience the episode as it's intended with everything together. For this one, I'm gonna opt out of releasing the scene early, probably same for episode 8, just because these are finale episodes and there's so much more revealed in the story, and I really care about your guys' experience. So with that being said, stay tuned for more news on that. Like, I'll be posting updates and, you know, giving little sneak peeks and screenshots and whatnot. And of course, I'm going to start streaming some of the production of that, and we'll start streaming some games as well. But yes, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, creators.